Good morning, everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Jessica. Hopefully you've had a chance to play some of Sia's fitness classes so far and able to get some exercise done at home. Today I've had a request to read some short stories. So we're going to read Chicken Soup for the Nature Lover's Soul. Lots of great books in here. So let's see. Today we'll read the book that is The Roaring River. All short stories. During the summer of 1977, my husband Bill and I, along with our two sons, 8-year-old Ryan and 5-year-old John, headed for a week-long tour of the state parks in southern Missouri. Being from the flatlands of Illinois, we had heard much about the beauty of the Ozarks hills and valleys, and we were not disappointed. The last park we visited was Roaring Rivers State Park. The river was cold, clear, and stocked with trout. It was here that my husband and sons discovered fly fishing. As novices, they didn't bring many trout home that trip, but I did manage to take quite a few pictures. When we got home, we vowed to go back to Roaring River as soon as we could. Over the next 6 years, we visited many times. Every March, we trekked out into the open day of trout season. And it was given that we would also spend our summer vacations there. With each trip, Bill and the boys got more proficient at fly fishing, and I continued to take photos of their progress. In 1983, Bill had a chance to transfer to the Ozarks region. And 6 months later, we relocated to Springfield, only 60 miles from Roaring River. Now every weekend, we could be spent doing what we all loved. Many times we would receive a call from the high school telling me that the boys had skipped school again, and I always knew where to find them. There they were, standing side by side on the banks of the river, oblivious to anything or anyone around them. Life was good. Time went by and the boys grew up. Ryan went into the service and was stationed in Louisiana, where he did some fly fishing on the Toledo Bend Lake. John got married, started college, and had a beautiful baby girl named Kaylee. Over the next year, he also held a full-time job and his marriage came to an end. But he still continued to go fishing with his dad and his brother. Then one cold morning in December 1994, John woke us complaining of a deep, agonizing pain in his abdomen. We rushed him to the hospital. The doctors ran many tests and finally gave us the dreaded diagnosis: it was liver cancer. He was only 22. John quit work and school and was put on a routine of chemotherapy treatments. Between therapies, he set out to do the things he'd wanted to do for a long time. He took several trips out west and spent a short time in Montana, where he promised to return someday to fly fish the blue ribbon trout streams. Then one evening in 1996, Bill and I attended a movie called A River Runs Through It. The story of a father and two sons living in Montana who fly fish every chance they get. We walked out of the theater unable to control our emotions. We looked at each other and immediately decided that somehow we were going to get John to Montana that summer. I did some research on the internet and found the best places to fish. We scraped together the money and had borrowed the rest. When we told John, he was thrilled. Ryan was expecting a baby, and at any time, and regrettably, he was not able to join us. We rented a cabin about 50 feet from the Madison River. Before we even had the car unloaded, John was at the river's edge. Bill and I walked down to watch him. He was totally at peace and in his element. It was just John, his pole, and the rushing river. It was as if time had stood still. There was no cancer, no sadness. There was just John and the river full of trout. We spent 2 wonderful weeks together. Although we had little money, we hired a guide to take John and Bill up to the high mountain lakes to fish for the wild trout. A year later, after this last round of chemotherapy, John was tested again, and all signs of cancer were absent. He was in remission. The next months were filled with happiness and plans for the future. John had met a wonderful young woman named Brandy, who had a 2-year-old son, Isaac. He, Brandy, and Isaac, and Kaylee went together everywhere. Kaylee loved to fish beside her dad, and John was teaching Isaac how to fly fish. He and Brandy made plans to get married in June of 1999. Suddenly, in the late fall of 1998, John's cancer came back. He continued to lose weight, and in December, we found out that the cancer had spread to his brain. He started radiation treatments, which caused him to have seizures. He was down to 120 pounds on his 6-foot 1-inch frame. Through all of this, he never lost his hope or his sense of humor. He was bald, and one of his friends sent him a clown wig. He sat up in his hospital bed, put on the wig, and smiled from ear to ear for my camera. He was able to leave the hospital for a brief period in the spring, and the wedding was moved up to May. Several days before the wedding, John rallied and seemed to be getting stronger. The wedding was held outdoors in Brandy's parents' yard. A very simple ceremony with only family and close friends in attendance. In June, we made our last trip with John to Roaring River. He couldn't fish for very long, but fish he did. He stood stock still while waiting for the elusive trout to bite. Weakness didn't deter him from the rhythmic cast of his fly rod. A slight breeze rippled across the clear, deep stream as we watched him drink in the sights and sounds of the area that he loved so much. It was as if he knew this would be his last trip there. On July 12, 1999, our son John passed away quietly with his family by his side. Services were held in the abandoned country church overlooking the Ozark Hills, just as he had wanted. When you are raising children, you never know what you expose them to and the shape that their entire lives. A chance trip to Roaring River introduced our boys to fly fishing. It gave them a lifetime of camaraderie, brotherly love, and communication with nature. As John once shared, "I never feel closer to God than when I'm in the middle of a trout stream." This past March, Ryan took Isaac to the Roaring River for the opening day of trout season, just as he did, John and their father had done so many times in the past. Isaac caught 3 trout. His dad would have been proud of him. The torch had been passed. That was written by Suzanne English Walker. The book was Chicken Soup for the Nature Lover's Soul. Until next time.